Alistair Begg has been in pastoral ministry since the early 1970s. Following graduation from the London School of Theology, he served 8 years in Scotland at both Charlotte Chapel in Edinburgh and Hamilton Baptist Church. Then in 1983, he became the senior pastor at Parkside Church near Cleveland, Ohio. He's written several books and is heard daily and weekly on the radio program Truth for Life, which stems from the week-by-week Bible teaching at Parkside Church. He and his wife Susan were married in 1975. They have 3 grown children. Thank you for joining us today, Alistair Begg.
Thank you very much. It's my privilege.
I want to start with your conversion and with your call to the ministry. I'm wondering what ways the Lord worked in your life to bring you to saving faith and then ultimately to bring you into pastoral ministry.
Sure. Well, it's always a treat to be able to answer that question because it's a reminder of the peculiar providences of God. First of all, I had a similar background, if you like, to Timothy in that I had, at least on my father's side, a godly grandmother who prayed for me before I was born, and a mother who also did the same. Unlike Timothy, my father was also a believer, but I was nurtured in a Christian home, and so from my earliest age, I was exposed to the gospel. And I actually professed faith as a small boy on a Sunday afternoon after someone at Sunday school must have explained the gospel enough for me to grasp it. And I remember asking my father, how old do you have to be, to trust Jesus? And he was very wise, and just in a very simple way, I knelt down on a Sunday afternoon with my father, and he led me in a prayer. I knew I was bad. I don't know how bad I was at that point, but I knew I was bad enough to be unkind to my younger sister and a few other things that I'd come up with a few new words of my own. And so I remember I asked Jesus to forgive me and to make me the kind of boy that he wanted me to be. I didn't know quite how that would work, but I had, by the time I reached my middle teens, a pretty good idea of how I personally wanted it to work. And my call to the gospel ministry is along the line of me trying to define my own terms. I had pretty well decided what I wanted to be, namely a solicitor or a lawyer. I knew who I wanted to marry, an American girl who's now my wife, mercifully. And I knew what car I wanted to drive back in those old days. And
so 1 out of 3 isn't too bad.
1 out of 3 is really good. I don't have the car, I do have the girl, and I don't have a law degree, but I have a theology degree. And God broke into my life in various ways, elements in my life through failure and tears. I think I've learned more through disappointment and sadness than I've learned through encouragement and laughter. The death of my mother prematurely from a human point of view, of a massive heart attack when I was 20 and my youngest sister was 11. A number of elements played into me going off to study theology. But even when I did that, I was convinced that the one thing I wouldn't do would become a pastor or a minister. I'd been exposed to ministers all my life, many of them in my home when I was a boy. They usually had really bad breath and sat really close to me on the couch and used to say things like, "Aye, maybe you'll be a minister one day, laddie." And used to scare the bejabbers out of me. So even when I sort of said to God reverently, I'll go where you want me to go and do what you want me to do, I had a little caveat to that, which was accept pastoral ministry. And in a strange and amazing way, God just put me in that way. And when I was ordained to the gospel ministry in 1976, in October of 76, it was a nerve-jangling, life-shaking, never-to-be-forgotten reality that I took with such seriousness that I have never entertained the possibility of doing anything else since. The fact that I'm incompetent for anything else sort of helps, but those are the facts. And so from that day in '76 to this day, I've been set apart to the gospel ministry.
Now, your ministry at Parkside Church has also been a really long-term ministry, and I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the challenges, but also the benefits of that kind of long-term ministry, which I think it's fair to say many pastors today don't enjoy.
Yeah, it takes a long-suffering congregation, to to allow you that privilege, and a praying congregation, a congregation that is willing to rise and fall with you, if you like, who take on you as a young man, as I was at 31, and have prayed along with me to the stage I am now. I'm now 62. And the benefits in it are that you have the opportunity to start with children in your nursery who are now the parents of the children in the nursery. And I'm now marrying the children of the people that I married, back in the early days. And that sense of continuity, of seeing generational change, of seeing parents instilling in their children the truths of the gospel, and seeing that come to fruition, being able to develop approach to mission in the world that was at the time not exactly mainstream, and yet being able to gain the confidence of the congregation and the leadership of the church to be able to take it in that direction. There's nothing sacrosanct, though, I think, about a long ministry, in that it could be a long and poor ministry. It doesn't necessarily mean that long equals wonderful or encouraging or whatever it might be. But I think the benefits outweigh the risks. I'm not good on the dangers of it. I suppose the dangers are that you begin to take yourself a little too seriously, or that you rest on your laurels, or that you're no longer as dependent as you once knew yourself to be. I think that I, in God's goodness, have managed to resist those things to a greater extent rather than a lesser extent, and so here we are.
So you said nothing sacrosanct about it, but in general, would you commend pastors to thinking long-term in their ministries?
Yeah, I think, now that I'm in the Philadelphia area, I can quote Jim Boyce, the late Jim Boyce. I think he was the one who said to me years ago, as a young man, you'll be tempted to think that you can accomplish more than you can in a year, and underestimate what you can accomplish in 5 years. And so that made a lot of sense to me at the time, and it still makes a lot of sense to me. And so, yes, I think there are peculiar benefits to it that can only be enjoyed if you are there over a prolonged period of time. But some men have a wonderful capacity for being good at starting things and engendering things, and have been used under God to do that in multiple places. I guess I just don't possess those gifts.
Now, what about the sort of job of a pastor? It seems like there are a lot of different ideas about what pastors are supposed to be doing, what leadership in a local congregation looks like. If you were, again, talking to someone earlier on in their pastoral ministry, or studying, preparing for gospel ministry, what would you say the essential duties and works of a pastor are?
I would say, in short, those that are defined by Paul in the pastoral epistles. I mean, I think, and that's not a cop-out to the question, I mean, I think that is really it. Paul continues to identify the context in Ephesus, and then he keeps saying, you, however, or but as for you. They're always listening. They are interested in the truth, but never able to come to a knowledge of the truth. But you, Timothy, you continue in what you've learned, Give yourself to the public reading of Scripture. You think about that in contemporary Christianity, where it's kind of hard to find a pulpit and a Bible in many places, and the idea of actually the place of the public reading of the Bible. Simple things like that, but foundational things like that. For me, in 2 Timothy, where Paul finally, I think, hits it dead on before he finally, signs his name at the end of it, if you like, when he says, again at the beginning of 4, or verse 5 of 4, after he's outlined the difficult days and the trying times, he says, but as for you, keep your head, endure hardship, do the work of an evangelist, and discharge all the duties of your ministry. And I think in that, there's enough for me to navigate through things. At the most practical level, though, it was John Stott who said the worst of ministers are those who are invisible Monday through Saturday and incomprehensible on a Sunday. It's a dreadful combination, you know. It'd be bad if you were just incomprehensible, but everybody loved you because you were pastorally involved in their lives. But to fail them there and fail them in the pulpit is a disaster. And so that notion of people being our books, of our engagement with people in the ups and downs and ins and outs of their lives is really foundational to what we're doing from the pulpit, unless we're using our pulpit just as an opportunity to present our own ideas or impress people with our rhetoric or whatever it might be. So I'm always urging young fellows to make sure that they are amongst their people in whatever dimension they can. I mean, I'm saying that to you now, and I'm sitting here on a Friday, a long way away from my own people, which then introduces the issue of a pastoral team and what that means for the development of a congregation, so that you have not only shared the load, but you've also shared the privilege, and that you've been training your people. In many ways, I think the role is akin to the conductor of the Cleveland Symphony. I mean, you are encouraging each member of the orchestra to play their part according to the score, and you are yourself subservient to that score, and namely the Scriptures.
So that gets into another question that often gets asked by students, but also by people who are heavily engaged in gospel ministry. How did you navigate through the various pressures of having a family and having a ministry which is pulling you in a number of different directions, Monday to Friday? Did you have any particular guidelines that you followed, or maybe lessons that you learned that you'd want to pass on to others?
Yes, probably. I don't know really what they are. You know, the only huge move that I've made was from Scotland to Ohio, and knowing that it was a fairly major shift, it gave me an opportunity to really evaluate the first 8 years of our married life in Scotland, the birth of our 3 children, and the prospect of what was before us. And so one of the decisions that I made was, this is going to sound very chauvinistic, but along with my wife, we made the decision that I was going to demand her care and protection for myself and for my children, to the detriment, if you like, of other areas that she may have had privileged opportunities in. In other words, I think I was savvy enough to recognize that unless I had security and support and prayerfulness and everything in my home, in the privacy of my own breakfast area or my own bedroom, then I was probably going to be in difficulty, just by observation. And so my wife has been that to me. In many ways, she has sublimated herself to the role. And people say, what does your wife do? I always say, she keeps me sane. She is to me all that I need and more besides. And so I've tried to model that for the fellows on my pastoral team as well, so that they can again have that sense of wholeness and a sense of protection within the realm of their own homes. And what I've been able to do, because I sought it for myself, I've been able to pass it on to them. So the church has really learned with us that if this fellow is not going to be able to take care of his own home, why would we ever want him to take care of the church in any case? And how is he going to be able to do this? So that would be a first thing. And then the other thing is in not falling foul of the idea that you are, omni-gifted and that you need to be omnipresent. Many of us as pastors who fulfill that role are pretty insecure individuals. And that insecurity can come out in a number of ways. And one of the ways is that we want to take everything to ourselves. We start to believe that we really are the ones that have to handle this. And I'm the one who knows about this. And I have a heavy dose of that in me. And therefore, I've tried to learn early on that the key to usefulness for me is in making sure that I'm surrounded by people who are better than me in so many different areas of ministry, so that I don't then find myself second guessing what they're doing, but rather being grateful to God for the gifts that He's given to them.
Yeah, and it does sound like you have a great team there that helps you navigate through that.
I do. I wouldn't trade places with anywhere I've been or with anyone with whom I've spent time in all the years across the country. And I don't say that in an unkind way towards any of my friends or colleagues, but it's really a testimony to the amazing way in which God has been really very kind to us as a church, and in terms of the leadership of the church and everything that goes along with it.
Now, I have to imagine, though, you were instrumental in at least trying to put together that team. Were there particular things that you were always looking for? I know there are different roles that individuals have, but particular common features that you were looking for?
No, I wasn't even clever enough to know what I was looking for, to tell you the truth. I came from Scotland without any knowledge of like a team ministry, because I hadn't had one. And I had to learn pretty quickly that I wasn't very good at this. That I sort of conceived of a team being just finding a bunch of people that were like me. And then I realized, wow, that's a bad idea, because I don't even like me. And why would I want another three like me? And I won't go into all the details, but in the goodness of God, after a period of about 6 or 7 years, it became apparent to me that unless I was to find an individual who had the capacity and the gifts for this whole team building structure that I don't have, then if that had not happened, we would not be having the conversation today, at least not about a tenure at Parkside that is heading for 32 years. Mm-hmm. And so the appointment of that individual, who was an elder in our church when we arrived, who was a partner, old school partner with Arthur Anderson, who was peculiarly gifted in human resources, he actually gave up substantial money and his career to come and do for me what I couldn't do for myself. And the key to the development of ministry at Parkside is actually directly tied to Jeff Mills and only tangentially tied to me, because without him, I call him my wife in ministry. That's how close the relationship. Everywhere I spoke last week, although he's been on vacation for 10 days, prior to my speaking, I got a text from him every single time. This morning, hey, I know you're speaking at 10 o'clock, praying for you, and also for your prep for tonight, and so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. So the level of this relationship is unusual, but it is a peculiar gift from God. And that's why we've been able to do what we've been able to do.
Last question. Many of the people viewing this are students, and many of them are students preparing for gospel ministry. What would you advise people who are thinking about that, who are in the preparation stage? What things would you tell them to emphasize? What things would you tell them to focus on and think about? What kind of training do you think would be helpful for them? How could you address them?
Well, I would encourage them, first of all, to make sure that within the framework of a local church where they are known best, to seek out the advice of those who know them best and who have their genuine best interests at heart. I mean, the real danger is that we have a sort of subjective feeling about what we believe we're supposed to be, and we're not really prepared to look for any kind of objective ratification of that. And so we just proceed on the basis of the feeling in our tummy. That's a real dangerous approach. And so I would be encouraging them not only to seek out the counsel of those who are in that capacity, but also to take every opportunity to test the sense of gift that they have. You want to find out if you can preach? Let's do a Bible class with 14 boys between the age of 8 and 10 at 2:30 on a Sunday afternoon. And let's see how good you are at that. Mm-hmm. You know, let's do the nursing home, and as everybody's there, you know, they're in the third stages of anesthesia. See how good you are at bringing one of the parables to life. Mm-hmm. You know, and maybe even bringing one of the listeners to life. Yeah, but just to and also to see what it is that moves you. You know, I just saw an interview with Helen Mirren. Not Helen Mirren, the other, Annie Lennox. And they were talking to her about celebrity and about fame. And she said that she didn't understand these categories, really. She understood them, but she wasn't interested in them because she regarded herself as an artist, as a musician who gave voice to, the gifts that she'd been given. And then she distinguished between the quest for celebrity and for fame that may come along the line of, let's say, a musical career. Mm-hmm. Well, you don't have to be a genius to recognize that notion is alive and well in contemporary evangelical America. Right. And so the real question is, what is it? So that this idea of the call of God, which is on the one hand the aspiration I desire, and on the other hand this amazing fearfulness. I am only a youth. I cannot speak. Who is sufficient for these things? Who are you? Well, I'm a finger, John the Baptist. Mm-hmm. I'm a light that shines, but I'm not the light. Mm-hmm. Looking for all of that inside of yourself is crucial, because it will only be then that sense of the divine afflatus and divine initiative which has propelled us into that position of usefulness that will keep us there when everything goes crazy, when it all goes pear-shaped, when the people no longer want to listen to you. And what are you going to do then? The only thing you can do is keep your head, endure hardship, do the work of an evangelist, and discharge all the duties of your ministry. And if I sound like I'm talking to myself, I'm talking to myself.
Well, thank you very much for talking to us today and for your time.
Thank you.